God's gracious mercy and protection we commit you. The gin and chan de vanache as the rail. The Lord bless you and keep you. The dere shan ere eden de hoshenot, as the be o grathul. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The drogen shan so ere ednort, just the dere dut she. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you peace. As banaciorin yato an air, amak as a spiritnu. The ronamas jau as the hanachton meriu, son the break.
Well, the service has now ended and we can see that the west door of the church, that's the one facing Tynwald Hill, has been opened to allow the congregation to leave. First out will be the church choir, followed immediately by the procession of guests, who will go to their enclosure at the foot of Tynwald Hill. Now, as you can see, St John's Church is a fairly typical village church, not the largest you've ever seen, and there are quite a lot of guests. I'm sure you'll soon begin to wonder how they all got in, but I assure you that they did, and every seat is allocated to a strict plan. As is customary on Tynwald Day, the guests include not only the spouses and partners of those taking part in the ceremony, but also a number of official guests of Tynwald. Some of these are parliamentarians from other jurisdictions, and some are distinguished in other fields. All have some links to the Isle of Man. First of all, from our fellow Crown dependency, the island of Jersey, Senator Ian Lamarckand is the Deputy Chief Minister. He's also Minister for Home Affairs, which gives him many of the responsibilities of our Home Affairs Minister, including the police, fire and rescue service and the prison. From the other end of the British Isles, we welcome Dr. Alistair Allen, who is Minister for Learning, Science and Scotland's Languages in the Scottish Parliament. A fluent Gaelic speaker, he represents the constituency of the Western Isles, and when he's not engaging in politics, he sings in the Back District Gaelic Choir on the Isle of Lewis. Also from the Scottish Parliament, we have the Deputy Presiding Officer, John Scott, who farms near Ballantrae and represents Ayrshire. A graduate in civil engineering from Edinburgh University, he's held numerous senior positions within the farming community and was elected Deputy Presiding Officer following the election of May 2011. Jim Wells represents South Down in the Northern Ireland Assembly. He serves on the Justice Committee and is Deputy Chair of the Health Committee. A town planner by profession, he's also the Chairman of the All-Party Group on Visual Impairment. Rosemary Butler is the Labour member of the Welsh Assembly for Newport West, which she's represented ever since the Assembly was created in 1999. A former mayor of Newport, she was elected presiding officer in the Assembly in May 2011. In her busy life, she maintains her interest in sport and the arts and is an honorary fellow of the University of Wales. Lord Green of Hurstpere Point is a banker and former management consultant who joined the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation in 1982 and has since held a succession of very senior roles within the HSBC Group, including Group Treasurer, Group Chief Executive and Group Chairman. In November 26, he became Chairman of the British Bankers Association. From our near neighbour, the Republic of Ireland, we welcome Joe McHugh, who represents Donegal North East in Dáil Éireann, as the first Fine Gael member for 10 years in that constituency. A former school teacher in Letterkenny, he's now co-chair of the British-Irish Parliamentary Assembly. His wife Olwyn is also a former Fine Gael member of the Irish Parliament. Peter Horrell is another distinguished member of the banking community, and since May this year he has been Chief Executive of the Wealth and Investment Management Division of Barclays. Unusually for a banker, he's a senior scholar in zoology at Cambridge University and is based in London. One of our guests with a direct association with the Isle of Man is Sir David Lewis, who's a member of the Isle of Man Financial Supervision Commission. Born in the Far East into a Welsh sheep farming family, he studied law at Oxford, where he's now an honorary fellow. In 2007-8, he was the 680th Lord Mayor of London and was knighted in 2009. Finally, Rear Admiral Chris Hockley joined the Navy in 1977. He graduated with an honours degree in naval engineering, followed by a master's in marine engineering. After numerous seagoing appointments, during which he served in all the aircraft carriers, Ark Royal, Illustrious and Invincible, he is now the Flag Officer for Scotland, Northern England, Wales and Northern Ireland. His home is in Cornwall. All of these distinguished visitors are official guests of Tynwald today. Well, after the procession of guests, we shall see the procession that includes the members of Tynwald, the members of Parliament. The procession will be in two parts. The first part will consist of senior officials, clergy and heads of principal local authorities. It will come just as far as the entrance to the War Memorial, and at that point, both parts of the procession will open up to allow the Lieutenant Governor to pass through and reach Tynwald Hill first. The members of Tynwald will be in the second part of the procession. We shall hear the trumpeters sounding a fanfare as the Lieutenant Governor leaves the church, and the Guard of Honour will be brought to the present arms as he approaches. His Excellency will take up his position on the top tier of Tynwald Hill, where he'll be joined by the President of Tynwald, the members of the Legislative Council and the Sword Bearer. The Legislative Council is the upper house, essentially a revising chamber, and it consists of the Lord Bishop, the Attorney General and 8 members elected by the House of Keys, very often but not always from their own members. The President of Tynwald is also the presiding officer in the Legislative Council, 5 years at a time. Proposals that democracy would be better served if the Legislative Council was to be elected by the people seem to carry broad support with Tynwald members, but as with so many things, the devil is in the detail, and discussion continues to find an acceptable mechanism to bring it about. The House of Keys, led by Mr. Speaker, is elected by the adult population, and the last 5-yearly election was held in 2011. I mentioned earlier that the Isle of Man broke new ground in 2006 by giving the vote to 16 and 17-year-olds, and of course, the Isle of Man was well ahead of the United Kingdom in giving the vote to women back in 1881. There are 24 members of the House of Keys, including Mr. Speaker, and they will be on the second tier of Tynwald Hill. The origin of the word keys is lost in antiquity. There have been several theories, none of them substantiated. One, for instance, links the term with the Manx Gaelic word for chosen. In any event, the term keys has been in use since the 15th century. By the way, of the 32 members of the Tynwald court, there are only 3 ladies, 2 in the House of Keys and 1, the President of Tynwald, in the Legislative Council. Many would say that's not nearly enough, but I suppose it reflects the number who offer themselves for election and are successful. On the 3rd tier of Tynwald Hill, we shall see senior officials, members of the clergy and the leaders of the principal local authorities. The captains of the parishes will be on the bottom tier. You'll remember that 2 of them greeted the governor on his arrival earlier this morning. It's an ancient office, usually conferred on someone who's prominent in parish life, or maybe a substantial landowner within the parish. Their duties nowadays are not too taxing, but they appear at Tynwald as a reminder that the law of the land applies equally to every one of the 17 parishes. Historically, they had responsibilities concerned with the maintenance of discipline within the parish, and I know that those who are appointed as captain of the parish regard it as a singular honour. We have captains of parishes, and we used also to have captains of towns, but they were replaced well over 100 years ago with the arrival of properly constituted local authorities, and the duties of town captain were absorbed into those of the mayor of Douglas and the chairmen of the various town commissioners, who will all be in the processions today. Also, on the bottom of the 4 tiers, we shall see the coroners. There should be 4 of them, but as there's currently 1 vacancy today, there are only 3. They are Crown officers who act as court officials, dealing with such things as the empanelling of juries, delivering summonses, and enforcing court orders, that sort of thing, and not the same as coroners in the United Kingdom. So, where are we today? Well, to state the obvious, we're in the village of St. John's, which in turn, and this is not so obvious, is in the sheading of Glenfaber. The word sheading is yet another Norse term. One interpretation has it as ship district. In Viking times, the sheading would have provided a war galley for the king. Nowadays, the 4 sheadings are groups of parishes, and today we shall hear Mr. Gordon Leese, the current coroner for Glenfaber, fence the court in the name of the Queen. This charges us all to behave ourselves during the ceremony. Nowadays this is all symbolic, of course, but in early times there would actually have been a physical fence around the official enclosure. The same charge is also made at the opening of all courts of justice in the Isle of Man as well. Mr. Leese will fence the court in English, and he'll be followed immediately by Unleather, the reader, who for the first time this year is Mr. Bob Carswell, and he will fence the court in Manx Gaelic, which he speaks fluently. The first item of business today will be to swear in the 3 coroners for the ensuing year. Each represents one of the sheadings. And then immediately afterwards, the 18 acts which Tynwald has passed in the last year will be summarised in Manx as well as English. Now, please don't be alarmed. The acts are not read in full. If they were, we should be here for a very long time. Each is summarised in no more than a sentence. But this is at the heart of the Tynwald ceremony and reflects the Viking principle that the laws are proclaimed to the people in the open air, and the people are then deemed to be aware of the laws that affect them. It's important because new legislation simply cannot come into effect without it. For many, the promulgation of the new laws represents the centerpiece of the ceremony, but for some, the most important element comes immediately afterwards. This is something you will find nowhere else. It's unique to Tynwald, as an opportunity is given to anyone who wishes to present a petition for redress of grievance. This is the right given to free men of man to petition the Lord or King at Tynwald, which is the highest court in the land. This only happens once a year, so if there are any today who wish to take advantage of it, you're requested please to report at the gateway to the War Memorial, to be marshalled onto the pathway at the appropriate time. Now you can see that the processions are continuing to make their way out of the church. And looking at the big screen, we can see the sword bearer in position there, ready to lead His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor out of the church and onto the pathway. The trumpeters are in position either side of the church doorway, and we shall hear them sounding a fanfare as the Lieutenant Governor leaves the church. You see the Lord Bishop is just leaving the church now, and so the Lieutenant Governor will not be far behind. You can see on the big screen that the sword bearer is walking down the central aisle of the church towards the west door and will shortly appear in the doorway just ahead of His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor. You can see that the processions are now lining both sides of the processional pathway, having come just as far as the gateway to the War Memorial. And now the procession starts its way to Tynwald Hill, led by sergeants of the Isle of Man Constabulary and those distinctive white helmets, and the trumpeters. You see that the Lieutenant Governor is being led by the sword bearer, bearing the state sword of man, Mrs. Bernadette McCabe, the first ever lady to hold the appointment. She's appointed by Tynwald. The sword, which is a fairly massive cross-hilted sword, is believed to date from the 13th century. The Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Adam Wood, was a career diplomat. This is his third Tynwald ceremony. He was educated at Oxford, a former High Commissioner in Kenya and Uganda, and ended his diplomatic career as Africa Director in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. He is attended by his private secretary, Mrs. Pauline Pescod, who was appointed in 2007, and she will feel very much at home today as she served 9 years in the Royal Navy. The surgeon to the household is there, Dr. Robert Fail. The Manx flag is carried by Police Sergeant Rosie Hawes. And then the President of Tynwald, the Honourable Mrs. Claire Christian, elected 2011, today wearing court dress with the full-bottomed wig, the blue gown embroidered in silver thread with Manx motifs. The Bishop of Soda and Man, the Right Reverend Robert Patterson, enthroned in June 2008, spent much of his ministry in South Wales, but was lately chaplain to the Archbishop of York, and he carries the crozier, well over 100 years old, made of Balarf bog oak and decorated in Manx silver. And the bishop carries in his title a reminder of our heritage, the Bishop of Soda and Man. The Sodarenses, what we now know as the Hebrides, were known as the Kingdom of the Southern Isles in Viking times. And then the first Deemster, His Honour David Doyle, appointed 2010, Clerk of the Rolls, acts on occasion as Deputy Governor, and he will be reading the laws in English. Followed by the second Deemster, His Honour Andrew Corlett, and he will be reading the laws in Manx. And then His Honour Alistair Montgomery, who is not known as the third Deemster, but simply as the Deemster, lately Deputy High Bailiff, and he presides in the Court of General Jail Delivery, which is the criminal court. And then the Acting Attorney General, John Quinn. The members of the Legislative Council, followed by the Clerk to the Legislative Council, Dr. Jonathan King, wearing wig and gown. And then the members of the House of Keys, led by Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Steve Roden, elected 2007 and re-elected 2011. Member of the House of Keys for the constituency of Garth, which is on the east side of the island, from Laxey north towards Ramsey, a pharmacist by profession. And he's followed by the Chief Minister, the Honourable Alan Bell, a member of the House of Keys for the constituency of Ramsey. As you can see, the two ladies in the House of Keys that I mentioned earlier. At the rear of the members of the House of Keys, the chaplain, Reverend Bill Martin, whose voice we heard from the church, and the Clerk of Tynwald, Mr. Roger Phillips, on whose shoulders falls the responsibility of organising today's events. The Chief Constable of the Isle of Man is there. Mr. Gary Roberts took up his duties at the beginning of this year, the first Manxman ever to hold the position of Chief Constable. The High Bailiff, His Worship John Neal, appointed 2010. He's the stipendiary magistrate and the coroner of inquests. And in Leather, Bob Carswell, undertaking these duties for the first time, and we shall hear him fencing the court in the Manx language. The Chief Registrar is there, Stephen Trujine. And then the heads of the principal local authorities, the Mayor of Douglas in the red gown, Councillor Mrs. Carol Malarkey, followed by the Chairman of Ramsey Town Commissioners, Captain Nigel Malpass, Peel Town Commissioners Ray Harmer, and Castletown Town Commissioners Kevin Weir. And then the Archdeacon of Man, the Venerable Andrew Brown, appointed 2011, served lately in Derby and is also the Vicar of St George's Church in Douglas. And followed by the Vicar General, Her Honour the Worshipful Clare Fones, again the first ever lady to hold the position, wearing full-bottomed wig and gown. Her position makes her the Chancellor of the Diocese of Soda and Man and Judge of the Ecclesiastical Court. And then the members of the benefice clergy, as they are described, the members of the Anglican clergy, and finally the Roman Catholic Dean, whose voice we heard from the church, and the Reverend Richard Hall, who read a lesson from the church, chairman of the Methodist District, and Captain Simon Clampton, the senior Salvation Army officer. Now, when everyone is gathered in their places on the hill, there will be a royal salute, and it's an appropriate moment to remind everyone of the grandstand of the notice on your tickets. Please remain in your places until all of the ceremony is over. Processions have returned to St. John's Church, and we've closed down the public address commentary. And so as the remaining members of the procession mount Tynwald Hill, I can tell you that immediately after the royal salute and the guard has come down from the present arms, the first voice we shall hear from Tynwald Hill will be that of His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor.
Learned First Deemster, direct the court to be fenced.
Coroner of Glenfaber Sheeding and Inlider, fence the court.
I do fence this court of Tynwald in the name of our most gracious Sovereign Lady the Queen. I charge that no person do quarrel, brawl, or make any disturbance, and that all persons do answer their names when called. I charge this audience to witness this court is fenced. I charge this audience to witness this court is fenced. I charge this whole audience to bear witness this court is now fenced.
And now the same charge in the Manx language.
Tommy Corin Whale Shaw Fohera, ons enem Charn Vanin. Na gin Pergebi, Troja, Baget, na gin Borenis a bee. As the gin the Cholia Fech, co freget trevisse neem. Tommy Cora Cortus, Nenis Shaw, de wel een Whale Shaw Fohera. Tommy Cora Cortus, Nenis Shaw, de wel een Whale Shaw Fohera. Tommy Cora Cortus, een Cledden Nenis Shaw, de wel een Whale Shaw Nisjach Fohera.
There's a nice bit.
Incoming coroners, take the oath in ancient form to execute your offices for the ensuing year and receive your staves of office from the hands of His Excellency.
Now we can see the coroners, 3 of them rather than the usual 4, mounting Tynwald Hill, where they will kneel in front of His Excellency Lieutenant Governor, and the oath of office will be administered by the first Deemster.
By that book, and by the holy contents thereof, and by the wonderful works that God hath miraculously wrought in heaven above and in the earth beneath, in 6 days and 7 nights, you shall, without respect of favour or friendship, love or gain, consanguinity or affinity, envy or malice, well and truly execute the office of coroner for each sheading to which you have been appointed for the ensuing year. So help you God.
The oath having been administered, the coroners will receive their staves of office from the hands of His Excellency. Staves of office are short wooden batons, about 16 inches long, and they will now return to their places on the hill, and we shall hear again the voice of His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor.
Learned Deemsters, I exhort you to proclaim to the people in ancient form such laws as have been enacted during the past year and which have received the royal assent.
Dogs Amendment Act 2012, which amends the Dogs Act 1990.
Slatus na modi, Liasaka, feed heed as der yeg. Taliasaka slatus na modi, nahi jeg, care feed as jai.
Road Traffic and Highways Miscellaneous Amendments Act 2012, which amends acts connected with road traffic and highways.
Slatus trollchus regia as regia mura, kakler de liasakan, feed heed as der yeg. Taliasakan na slatusen benton rish trollchus regia as regia mura.
Casino Amendment Act 2012, which amends the Casino Act 1986 to allow the issue of temporary premises certificates, enabling gaming to take place on specified premises for a specified period, and makes minor amendments to other acts.
Slatus tyen gammon, liasaka, feed heed as der yeg. Taliasaka slatus tyen gammon, nahi jeg care feed as shay. De liga tastian shaladak, de ve courage mac, de laul kerrigus de gulla cummel. Unsinadan, as ek treken emissich as to Jinu, liasakan beggar, on slatusen elia.
Fisheries Act 2012, which reenacts with amendments and further provisions acts connected with inland and sea fisheries.
Slatus eustak, feed heed as der yeg. Ta chit harish as liasakan as slatusen bentonrish eustak chira, as eustak mara, as to Jinu Karelen soja.
The Gambling Duty Act 2012, which makes new and consolidated provision for the administration of excise duty on gambling.
Slatus Kistai Kerrigus, Feed Heed as Derjeg, to Charglim Rakelia, in Lai Benton Rish Rera Kistai a Kerrigus, as to Jinu Karelin no.
Legal Aid Amendment Act 2012, which amends the Legal Aid Act 1986 and the Advocates Act 1976.
Slatus Kuna Egalai Liasaka, Feed Heed as Derjeg, to Liasaka Slatus Kuna Egalai, Nahi Jeg Care Feed as Shay, as Slatus Nataneren, Nahi Jeg, 3 Feed as Shay Jeg.
Partnership Amendment Act 2012, which amends the Partnership Act 1909 in respect of the accounting requirements for limited partnerships.
Slatus Pertius Liasaka, Feed Heed as Derjeg, to Liasaka Slatus Pertius, Nahi Jeg as Nai. Benton Rish enact Sidon der Pertius and Charmanich, Recortison Nakuntason Och.
The Companies Beneficial Ownership Act 2012, which requires certain companies to appoint nominated officers to hold information about beneficial owners of such companies, and requires members to provide the information to the nominated officers.
Slatus Sheshakton Devil, Shaludarak Fawasak, Feed Heed as Derjeg, to Kirkurum Sheshakton Devil Enyek, Fierik en Masicha von Chael, Doril Fizzery, Michon Shaludaran J. Lied, na Sheshakton Devil, as to Kirkurum Altanen, Fizzery a Kurder, na Fierik en Masich.
Company and Business Names, etc. Act 2012, which concerns the names of certain bodies and businesses.
Slatus Enman Sheshakton as Kirpen Devil as Ninlied, Feed Heed as Derjeg, to Benton Rish Enman Kirpen as Sheshakton Devil Enya.
Heavily Indebted Poor Countries Limitation on Debt Recovery Act 2012, which limits the recovery of certain debts against certain poor countries and territories.
Slatus Chirigan Bok, for Fiergan Tro, Kirkariak a Gedin Erash Fierkan, Feed Heed as Derjeg, to Kirkariak a Gedin Erash, Fierkan Enyek, to Per de Hirigan as Taluin Rails Bok.
Town and Country Planning Amendment Act 2012, which amends the Town and Country Planning Act 1999 in regard to the Protected Buildings Register.
Slatus Ganel Trogel and Spalligen, as Era Cheer, Liasaka, Feed Heed as Derjeg, to Liasaka Slatus Ganel Trogel, Nahi Jeg Care Feed as Nijeg, Benton Rish Recortus na Trogel and Cordage.
Moneylenders Amendment Act 2012, which amends the Moneylenders Act 1991 to widen the powers of exemption from the requirement to register under that act.
Slatus na Useren, Liasaka, Feed Heed as Derjeg, to Liasaka Slatus na Useren, Nahi Jeg Care Feed as Nernjeg, de Lienica na Purchen de Cursesnus, Vayan Curran de Ve Recortisich, Tunsa Clatus Shen.
Law Officers Act 2013, which concerns the discharge of the functions of the Attorney General.
Slatus Thurika Lai, Feed Heed as Trijeg, to Bentonrish Kulina Kerman, Attorney Tier.
Income Tax Act 2013, which confirms temporary taxation orders and repeals some spent taxation acts and amends or repeals other taxation acts.
Slatus Kish Chitstiach, feed heed as Trijeg, Ta Firinyaka Ordican Kish Tamiltak, as to Muka, Pert de Latterson Kish Maru, as to Liasaka Namuka, Slatterson Kish Elia.
Cash in Postal Packets Act 2013, which amends various acts to make provision for cash contained in postal packets and adds definitions in the Post Office Act 1993.
Slatus Ergid uns Pagad in Postak, feed heed as Trijeg. Taliasaka Pert de Latterson, de Karel son Ergid uns Pagad in Postak. As to Kirstiak, Hielicton, and Slatus unik Postak, Nahi Jeg, Carefeed as Trijeg.
Licensing Amendment Act 2013, which amends the Licensing Act 1995 in respect of the disposal of liquor seized from minors and drinking in public places.
Slatus Stole Kid, Liasaka, feed heed as Trijeg. Taliasaka Slatus Stole Kid, Nahi Jeg, Carefeed as Quegjeg. Benton Rish Gedden Ray, Rish Jock Lerger, Goich Vi Sly Foh, as Goo Jock Lerger uns Iniden Tiach.
Financial Services Miscellaneous Amendments Act 2013, which amends the Financial Services Act 2008 and the Collective Investment Schemes Act 2008.
Slatus Shavation Ergodol, Kakler de Liasakan, feed heed as Trijeg. Taliasaka Slatus Shavation Ergodol, feed heed as Hock. As Slatus Skamen Ergod Baich Kokarjan, feed heed as Hock.
Children and Young Persons Amendment Act 2013, which makes further provision about parental responsibility for children.
Slatus Clone as Slyega, Liasaka, feed heed as Trijeg. Takarel na Soja, Benton Rish, Fregatus Air as Moor, Son Clone.
Has Your Excellency any further commands?
If any persons wish to present a petition, let them now come forward.
Well, that was a reference to the procedure that I mentioned earlier, whereby petitions for redress of grievance can be handed to the Lieutenant Governor today. Tynwald Court being the highest court in the land, and looking down on the processional pathway, you will see that indeed there is a number of petitioners making their way towards the foot of Tynwald Hill. The petitions can be on virtually any subject, but the actual form of the petition has to be drafted in the appropriate way. This is something on which the Clerk of Tynwald can and does give advice. When the petitioners reach the foot of Tynwald Hill, they will hand their petitions to the Clerk of Tynwald, who will then deliver them to the Lieutenant Governor at the top tier of the hill. And the Lieutenant Governor will tell us all what action he proposes to take. Petitions have been handed to the Clerk of Tynwald, and he in turn will hand them on to the Lieutenant Governor, and we shall hear his decision as to what initially, at any rate, he intends to do about them, and I think you'll find that he will refer them to a committee.
I shall refer these petitions to the Standing Orders Committee of Tynwald, who will report thereon at their earliest convenience.
Well, having heard the decision of the Lieutenant Governor, the petitioners will now withdraw, and we shall hear a fanfare leading into the Manx National Anthem. And immediately after the anthem has been sung, we shall hear again the voice of the Lieutenant Governor.
This concludes the proceedings on Tynwald Hill. There will now be a sitting of Tynwald Court in the Royal Chapel of St John's. On behalf of myself, the learned Deemsters, the captains of the parishes and others here assembled, I am pleased to accept the invitation of the President of Tynwald to be present at the sitting of Tynwald Court and to witness the captioning of the Acts just promulgated.
Now, people, please don't be misled. Although the business on Tynwald Hill itself has been completed, the whole of the Tynwald ceremony is not yet over. As His Excellency has indicated, the processions are now going to reform and return to St John's Church, where there will be a short but highly significant meeting of the Tynwald Court. Like the church service earlier, we're not able to see it directly, but with the help of technology, we shall all be able to watch it on the big screen. The return procession to the church will be in 3 parts, not 2 as we saw earlier. Firstly, the Lieutenant Governor and the Deemsters will proceed directly to the robing room, leaving the President to be the first to re-enter the church. She will announce that she has invited the Lieutenant Governor and the Deemsters to join the members of Tynwald as guests for this part of the ceremony, as they are not actually members of the Tynwald court. They will enter by the south door, that's the one facing the main road. But before all that, we shall hear the voice of Police Superintendent Paul Cubban calling the members of Tynwald and others off Tynwald Hill.
Two sergeants of the Isle of Man Constabulary, the coroners, the senior Salvation Army officer, the ministers of the free churches, the chairman of the Isle of Man district of the Methodist Church, the Roman Catholic Dean, the beneficed clergy, the Dean of St. German's Cathedral, the Vicar General, the Archdeacon, the Chairman of the Town and Village Commissioners, the Mayor of Douglas, the Chief Registrar, the Captains of the Parishes, in Leda, the High Bailiff, the Chief Secretary, the Chief Constable, the members of the Legislative Council, Her Majesty's Acting Attorney General, the Lord Bishop, two messengers of the House of Keys, the Chaplain of the House of Keys, the Clerk of Tynwald, Secretary of the House of Keys and Counsel to the Speaker, the members of the House of Keys, Mr. Cretney, Mr. Ronan, Mrs. Cannell, Mr. Gorn, Mr. Robert Shaw, Mr. Skelly, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Watterson, Mr. Shimon, Mr. Crageen, Mrs. Beecroft, Mr. Singer, Mr. Horton, Mr. Tia, Mr. Henderson, Mr. Cannon, Mr. Karen, Mr. Krukow, Mr. Hall, Mr. Anderson, Mr. Quirk, Mr. Quayle, the Chief Minister, the Speaker of the House of Keys, one messenger of the Legislative Council, the Deemster. The second Deemster. The first Deemster and Clerk of the Rolls. The Clerk of the Legislative Council. Two Garden Cody. The Tynwald Seneschal. The President of Tynwald. Two Sergeants of the Isle of Man Constabulary. Trumpeters. The Sword of State. His Excellency the Lieutenant Governor. The Private Secretary to the Lieutenant Governor. The Surgeon to the Household. The Manx flag.
Now you can see that the procession of guests is now making its way back towards the church, led by the governor's wife and daughter. And when everyone has returned to the church, and as you can see this is obviously going to take quite a few minutes, the meeting of Tynwald that I mentioned earlier will begin. This is called the captioning ceremony, in which the acts just promulgated on Tynwald Hill are, as they say, captioned. This is a process by which certificates are added to the acts, witnessing to the fact that they have indeed been promulgated or proclaimed from Tynwald Hill. You could argue that this is the most important part of the whole ceremony, because without it, the new legislation would simply lapse. Each certificate will be signed first by the President of Tynwald and then by the Speaker of the House of Keys. And by custom, these signatures are written using quill pens. Then, on the conclusion of the captioning ceremony, captioning of the acts, the President of Tynwald will invest Mrs. Nadine Crowther, MBE, with the Tynwald Honour. This is the highest honour that Tynwald can bestow, and it's given to someone who's made an outstanding and sacrificial contribution to Manx life. Mrs. Crowther was one of the guiding lights in the establishment of the Isle of Man Hospice, and has been at the forefront of its development and management ever since. But in the meantime, just as soon as the processions have cleared the pathway, the Guard of Honour and the band will move to new positions on the main road. And at this point, may I emphasise, please, that the Tynwald ceremony is not yet over, and in particular can I appeal to members of the public not to encroach onto the roadway or the immediate area of the Lich Gate, but to keep that area clear for the departure of the Lieutenant Governor. Now, we all know, indeed we're reminded of it every day, that British armed forces are currently deployed in operations in different parts of the world, notably in Afghanistan, and resources are stretched, to say the least. Nevertheless, the Tynwald ceremony is privileged every year to enjoy the support of representatives of the armed forces. It's no holiday. The Tynwald ceremony is a physically onerous parade involving a long stand, and that applies equally to the standard bearers and all the other route lining parties, as well as the Guard of Honour and the band. I hope you'll agree that they have all served us extremely well this morning. So, very well done, everyone. So now for just a few minutes we are going to listen to the band, and many of you will have recognized some familiar melodies. So Captain Gregory, carry on as arranged please with the Tynwald March. Well, people, we've heard a great deal this morning about Vikings, and there's no doubt that they left an enduring mark on this island. But for them, the assembly at Tynwald was an annual event, and that was all. It's hard to imagine that any national parliament could get away with that in 2013, and so the Tynwald Court meets monthly in Douglas during most of the year. It may not be in the open air, but it is in public, and you can go along and see what they get up to. And so, as we approach the end of the Tynwald ceremony itself, do remember that Tynwald Day is a public holiday. You've got a day off, and a fair day. If you ask a Manxman, are you going to the fair this year? You don't need to explain which fair. Everyone knows what you mean. And these days, you don't have to go anywhere else for your entertainment. You can get it right here at St. John's throughout the rest of the day. There'll be live music of all kinds and many other forms of entertainment here on the field, in the Arboretum behind the grandstand, in the church, even on Tynwald Hill itself. And the day will end with the Ellen Vannin pipes and drums on Tynwald Hill at 10 o'clock tonight. And if you're not sure about any part of the programme or need more details about it, there's an information centre in the school across the road. And if you'd like to hear the band again, there'll be an opportunity this evening at 7:15 when the band of Her Royal Marines Scotland will beat retreat right here on the field at St. John's. And as a bonus, after the Lieutenant Governor has left St. John's today, the band will come back onto the field to entertain us for about another 15 minutes. So we can look forward to that. Very soon now, they will be moving with the Guard of Honour down to the main road opposite the church Lichgate. And of course, on any fair day like today, there are stalls. Today we've lots of them laid out behind the grandstand in aid of many good causes, and they'll be delighted to see you. And so that ends the public address commentary on the Tynwald ceremony for 2013. Don't forget to continue to watch the captioning ceremony on the big screen. It doesn't last very long, and of course the investiture of Nadine Crowther with the Tynwald Honour. And afterwards, however you decide to spend the rest of the Manx National Day, do make sure you enjoy it. It only comes round once a year. This is Ian Cannell with Bill Dale. Thank you very much for your attention. Guramayu, as fast am I.
Providing the commentary on Tynwald Day for a remarkable 50th time today. Ian Cannell has been the official commentator every year since 1964. He is a consummate professional who pays the closest attention to detail and is highly respected for his many skills, not just in broadcasting, and most importantly, for simply being a very decent and proud Manxman with a great sense of humour. I am sure everyone here today will join in offering our sincerest gratitude to Ian Cannell on his 50 years as commentator, a quite remarkable achievement.
Thank you, Bill. I was only a baby when I started.
Governor, First Deemster and Clerk of the Rolls, His Honour the Secretary and Deemster to be present to witness this sitting of the court. I call upon the Clerk of Tynwald to escort them to their places. Please be seated, honourable members. Your Excellency, Your Honours, I welcome you to this sitting of Tynwald Court for the captioning ceremony, which effects the completion of the legislative process and confirms the validity of those measures enacted during the past year and promulgated during our proceedings this morning. Members of Council, Mr Speaker, and members of the House of Keys, we shall now caption the acts just promulgated on Tynwald Hill. Members, this historic ceremony has continued down through the centuries, though its participants, of course, come and go. However, some are involved for rather longer than others, and today I wish to acknowledge the 50 years of service given by Mr. Ian Cannell, CBE. For half a century, his skillful and informed public commentary has enhanced the understanding and experience of those who witness our ceremony. His services to Tynwald in this capacity are greatly appreciated. In recognition of those who serve the community, it is my privilege today to present the Tynwald Honour. This honour is given only to a person who has made an outstanding and enduring contribution to Manx life. It is the highest honour that Tynwald can bestow, and this year the court has agreed that it should be awarded to Mrs. Nadine Crowther for her exceptional work for the Isle of Man Hospice and the Anti-Cancer Association over a period of many years. Mrs. Crowther's commitment to caring began when she was a teenager, when she volunteered to help geriatric and terminally ill patients in her local hospital. Arriving here 40 years ago, she became involved with the Anti-Cancer Association, which she still supports today, and continued to help those with a terminal illness by establishing a telephone counselling service. Believing in the principles of the emerging hospice movement, she energetically pursued her goal of providing home care by establishing a night nursing service. Then, with perseverance and considerable determination, but always with great charm, she won over those in the medical profession and elsewhere who were resistant to change, and the Isle of Man Hospice Charity was established in 1983. From the community service of its early years, it has burgeoned into the wide-ranging and holistic provision which we are all familiar with today. Whilst Mrs. Crowther is the first to acknowledge the huge team of people who support hospice, it was her drive and initiative which were at its genesis and progressed its development. I will now ask the Clerk of Tynwald to bring forth Mrs. Crowther to receive her award. Mrs. Crowther, it has been this island's great good fortune that your talent and abilities have been exercised to the full on behalf of our community. Your innate kindness and consideration and your compassion have been combined with what I can only describe as your consummate negotiating skills and persistent hard work over many years, which has resulted in a service which will be of enduring benefit to the Isle of Man's people. The Manx people are most grateful for what you have done. It is therefore my great privilege, on behalf of my Tynwald colleagues, to present you with the Tynwald Honour. Members of the Council, Mr. Speaker, and members of the House of Keys, that concludes the business of the Court. The Court will now stand adjourned until the 9th of July at 10:30 a.m. in Douglas. I call upon honourable members to be upstanding for the departure of His Excellency and his party. Honourable members, Council will now withdraw and the members of the House of Keys will transact such business as Mr Speaker may place before them.
Call on the Honourable Member for Ramsey, the Deputy Speaker, Mr Singer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I move that all bills and other business before the House remaining unfinished at this date be suspended and continued at the same stage for the first meeting of the House in the new legislative year.
I call on the Honourable Member for Douglas South, Mr Cretney.
Mr Speaker, I beg to second.
Honourable Members, I put the motion. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honourable Members, since the business of the House for this session was concluded at our last sitting, there is now no further business to transact. The House will now stand adjourned to 10:30 a.m. in Tynwald Court in Douglas on the 9th of July 2013.
How are you? I'm here with John Kenyuk, who's one of the island's most well-known farmers. John, it's been a difficult year for the farming industry on the island.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And here on a warm July day at Tynwald, it's hard to imagine what we actually went through in March and April of this year. I would say that the Friday before the snowstorm actually burst was one of the worst days I ever remember in farming.
Tell me what your memories of it was.
My first memory was, of course, on the Friday itself, when the sleet was absolutely horizontal through this valley. We were lambing and calving outside. We were halfway through the programme. It was going well, but when we went down to the field on the morning after that night of storm, to see the dead stock, lambs that had died for no other reason but because they had just perished in the extreme weather, and to find sheep that had been trying to lamb just didn't make it. It was hard to look at.
And we lost thousands of livestock in that incident.
Yes, the island overall lost about 16,000 head of livestock, much of which was breeding stock, and that has been the factor which will take this into years ahead to replace breeding stock, particularly the sheep that are hefted on the hill. Those sheep are born up there, they live up there, and they die up there, and it is their progeny that take over from them. So when they go out like they did last March, the hill farmer has to start again to either breed up what is left of his flock or to import and to get them again hefted to the hill into those conditions. It will take a long time.
I mean, we're talking years and years into the future.
We are taking years, and as far as the farming community is concerned, the full effect of this will not really be felt until the feed bills come in and remain unpaid because of the loss of stock, which would have paid the bills. And we would then think in September and October we will have lambs to sell, and that would then square all our accounts. It's not going to happen this year.
On a positive note, if there is one out of this situation, the community has rallied round, and now the government's come forward with some funds to help out too.
The response from the people has been absolutely tremendous. It's been very, very moving, in fact. Not only here on the Isle of Man, but I personally had cheques to forward to the fund from as far away as from Essex, where a considerable amount of money from a church in Essex was forwarded to us. The public sympathy has been tremendous, and I think we must remember that and use that as a launch into whatever may be the future, that the public did support us. We believe they will support us, and that is very, very encouraging. Yes, you're right. It can be a positive thing.
Thank you very much, John.
Joining me now is MLC Tony Wild. And Mr. Wild, your thoughts on the day so far?
Absolutely brilliant. I think the smiles and faces all around are evidence of a very successful Tynwald this year.
Well, what do you make of the ceremony itself? What was the view like from up on the hill?
It's actually very. It makes you very proud, and it is quite an experience that's difficult to. It's a privilege.
And a very new experience for you. How's been your impression of Tynwald Day since you entered government?
Well, last year I was very focused on the day and making sure I did it right, whereas today I sort of took more in and enjoyed it more. as you become more experienced. But I think it's a lovely gesture of our nationhood as the Isle of Man as a jurisdiction, and I think I'm very proud to be part of it.
And we were just talking off camera there about the thousands and thousands of people that are here today. It's fantastic to see, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a real sort of getting together of the people, and as I say, I think it's a wonderful symbol of the Manx as a nation.
And quite often Manx politics can be a roller coaster affair, but today there is that sense of unity, that sense of national pride, isn't there? We see it, young children, smiling faces, and it's what Tynwald Day is all about, I think.
It is, and I think the Chief Minister mentioned earlier today that this is one day where, as politicians, you can just be friends and colleagues and enjoy the day and enjoy the moment.
Has there been any highlights for yourselves today?
Well, I think the actual band and the Royal Navy are splendid. It's a real treat to get that type of attendance, and I think the fact that it's not been raining, that's a highlight. The sun sort of kept away and it's come out now for afterwards, so it should be a good fair for everybody.
Happy Tynwald Day, Mr. Wild, and with that, Ariane, it's over to you.
Carol Malarkey, the Mayor of Douglas. Carol, this is your first Tynwald Day in your position. How has it gone?
Absolutely marvellous. What an honour to sit on that hill on our National Day. An absolute honour.
And what's your sort of capacity here in Tynwald? I mean, what do you do? What role do you play?
I'm the Mayor of Douglas. I head the Douglas Council members.
And how have you found it so far in that position? Because when did you become mayor? It was very recently.
It was the 8th of May this year. It's extremely different position than what I've held previously. Obviously I've had the Chairman of Housing, so that was quite a role that was quite difficult. So this is a little bit more relaxed, although a very busy role.
And do you keep your other responsibilities as well as a councillor while you're the mayor?
No, the role of mayor is ex officio. It's not a politics role, it's more of an ambassadorial role, really.
Okay. Well, congratulations on becoming mayor, and thank you very much for joining us today at Tynwald.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, your thoughts on the day so far?
Well, it's turned out beautiful sunshine, and it's another historic occasion for the Manx people, celebrating our proudly independent system of parliamentary government here in the Isle of Man.
And you've seen quite a few Tynwald Days now over the past 10 years or so, but just how many people are here today? There must be at least 3, 4, 5,000.
I would have said so. When we have a member of the royal family, the crowds are considerably bigger, as you can appreciate, but it's a very pleasing crowd indeed, and an enthusiastic crowd, I think.
We were talking when we went on air about how important now the family theme of Tynwald seems to be, and just how many young children are here today, I think, is a testament to that.
Yes, indeed, especially the youngsters who are in uniformed organisations, standing very smartly and patiently, lining the processional way. I think we pay tribute to them and the organisations of which they're members. It's great to see young people being involved, and of course the school parade, they look terrific as well. And I think, you know, this is something for all the people of the Isle of Man, all ages, and no matter where we're originally from, we count it as our home and we must all celebrate it.
Mr. Speaker, happy Tynwald Day. Thank you very much for joining us. Ariane, back to you.
Chief Minister Alan Bell, we interviewed you obviously for the big screen today already. How has Tynwald been for you this year?
I think it's been a very good year this year. The weather's been very helpful, it's been very warm and pleasant, which has brought the crowds out today, which has changed the atmosphere a little bit, I think. But I think the whole day has gone very, very well so far. I think we're very pleased with it.
And there's a big push, isn't there, within Tynwald to encourage the family atmosphere in Tynwald. I mean, that's kind of, apart from the politics, that's what it's all about today.
It is, and Tynwald is a day really when we all put our differences to one side. We all come together in a very pleasant atmosphere, celebrating Manxness, celebrating our heritage. And it's a good day too, not just for the island people, or the Manx people, but of course over the last few years we've had so many new people coming to the island as well, and this is a great way for them to integrate and understand our heritage and be part of the Isle of Man, which they all enjoy so much.
Do you get lots of questions about what this is all about?
There are a lot of questions. Some people are still quite baffled about it the first time they come, especially the Manx element of it, which they don't always understand. But I think they get a grasp of it very quickly and are often back year after year after that.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief Minister Alan Bell.
Cheers.
Ms Horton, happy Tynwald Day, and what's been your thoughts on the day so far?
Another excellent day, another very, very successful event, and another year.
I mean, there's so many people here today. Your view from up on the hill must have been a fine one this afternoon.
It is. I have to say, though, the crowds are diminishing as the years go over, and that's a concern. We need to look at that. That's the serious end of it over with. But with all the work that everybody has done, and all the behind-the-scenes workers too, it takes a whole year to organise the next Tynwald. You don't realise that, and I congratulate them all for all the work that they've done.
How do you think the ceremony itself went today?
I thought it went very smoothly, very professionally, and as I said, it's very pageantry, and it's the pageantry event that indeed Westminster doesn't have, that we have. And it's quite a spectacle, and I'm just surprised there's not more people come to see it.
Well, just on that note then, do you think the increased theme of families and children here and so on is the way forward? There certainly seems to be a lot more children here than there was last year. Maybe the weather's got something to do with that, but is that the way forward, do you think?
That is the way forward, because the children are our future. And there are a number of events for children, and it's a very, very spectacular and educational event with all the other sideshows that are off the hill here, not just the entertainment sides on the other side of the hill. So I think all of that put together, and some more work we need to do to encourage it, to make the crowds greater for future years.
And as a member of Manx Parliament, then how do you feel when you sit on that hill every year? What is the sense of occasion?
Very proud. It's a very proud thing to do. It's a very, very spectacular thing to see, sitting on the hill and looking out at all the people and all the invited guests, and indeed our honoured guests that we bring to Tynwald as the years go over, of course. And that's a very, very important thing, because there's an awful lot of people from other countries around the Commonwealth that we bring each year, and they are honoured that way by coming to Tynwald Hill themselves. So all in all, it's an excellent, excellent event.
Well, just on that note then, how important is the tradition of Tynwald Day to the Isle of Man's identity on the international stage?
It's of paramount importance. It's of paramount importance, and I think it should always remain going forward. And what we need to do is building it, modernise it as time goes along. But as we do all of that, that's that as I see as the way forward, for Tynwald Day in the future. But as it is now, it's still quite a spectacular pageantry occasion, and long may that go on for.
Mr Horton, happy Tynwald Day. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ready. Bishop Robert Patterson, how has your Tynwald been today?
Splendid. Couldn't have been better. Look at the weather. Perfect. Yes, lovely as usual.
It's a little bit different from last year. I think we had pouring rain by about this time.
Yes, we did. But I always tease the members of Tynwald, you see, because those of us who sit on the top layer of Tynwald Hill don't get any problem with the rain. It's the ones that sit where the tent ends. Those are the ones that one feels sorry for. But I always get away with it, you see.
And usually we talk a lot about is it the staff that you hold when you walk up the ceremonial path?
Yeah.
I heard today, how old is it? It's very old.
It was made in 1908, but the wood from it is a good deal older. It was found in the currachs, those are the bogs near Ballaugh. And it's probably been in the ground, fell off a tree and been in the ground for centuries before that, so it's thought. So it's very old, it's very, very heavy, and it's covered with Manx silver, very intricate Celtic designs in Manx silver. It's beautiful.
Okay, and that traditional aspect to Tynwald, is that something personally you enjoy?
Yes, I do, yes, yeah. I mean, I think you could criticise the ceremony for being rather like something out of a fairy tale, really. It's all a bit make-believe, or the Commonwealth before independence, that kind of thing. But there is something really, there's something very, relaxing, very comforting, just occasionally, to remember that you're part of something which has been going on. All right, it's been changing, but it's been going on for over 1,000 years. Something very reassuring about that, I think.
Bishop Robert, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ariane. And of course, one of the highlights of the Tynwald ceremony every year is the awarding of the Tynwald Honour. And this year's recipient was the founder of Hospice Isle of Man, Nadine Carrowther. Earlier this week, I spoke to Mrs. Carrowther, who reflected on 3 decades of hospice.
You're the recipient then of the 2013 Tynwald Honour. Many congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Before we get into why you're receiving the award and so on, just tell us about how you were informed. Did you expect anything like this, and what was your reaction when you were told?
I got an indication from Madam President earlier on in the year, but it obviously had to go through Tynwald. So, yes, that's how I found out. I was absolutely thrilled, you know, it was wonderful. And my family, of course, are very pleased. And I know that my late husband would have been very, very pleased about it because he was a great support. I'd been very interested in terminal care from being a teenager because I actually did volunteer work in a hospital on a geriatric ward. So I found it, and pain relief was pretty abysmal in those days. So it's always been with me throughout. And then, of course, I married a GP. We came to the island in 1973 with a family. And I joined the Isle of Man Anti-Cancer Association. And I was All-Island Secretary. And then I moved on from there and I started to inquire about the hospice movement because it really was growing by then. And there was, you know, it was very good. So I took myself all over the country, disappeared from time to time from home and went off and looked at other hospices. I wrote to everywhere I could. I got lots of information, and particularly from St Christopher's Hospice in London, because they had a very good information centre, which they hadn't long set up when I started to inquire. So, you know, it was, I was really sort of gathering everything, and at the same time, other members of the anti-cancer were interested in the hospice movement as well. So eventually we formed a small group, and we brought in some business people as well, and so on. And we worked on that for until 1983, and then we obviously registered as a charity.
Tell me about Hospice Isle of Man as it is now then in 2015. What are the facilities like? You talked about the staff, the great number of volunteers. Just touch on that for us.
Yes, well, we have a new hospice now, as you know, a wonderful building. It's obviously, we can take more patients. It's a 12-bedded unit. We sometimes take respite patients as well, you know. And we've got a lot more inpatient care because we actually take people, you know, for pain and symptom control. Some stay a short time, some a bit longer. We have a wonderful day centre there, and we have Rebecca House, the children's hospice, which obviously was something new to us. But I do want to say how wonderful all the volunteers have been over the years. You know, when we started it was volunteers, and our staff are very dedicated to what they're doing. But it sort of, it rather gets you, you know, you sort of, it takes its grip.
Many congratulations, Nadine.
Thank you so much. Thank you.